And welcome to the Flicks Picks, to the Nitpicks, and I am your humble host, S02EP13. And it's been a while since we did one of these, but we gotta do reviews, and we gotta do the film. Well, film special, however you want to call it, Power Rangers, once and always. So let's get right to it. So we just gonna touch, before I get into my non-spoiler, we're gonna read like the opening that's on Netflix, so at least you could know a little bit about the flick before we get into the picks and nitpicks. So without further ado, this is directly from the first page of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Once and Always on Netflix. A sacrifice sets the Rangers on their most personal journey yet, leading them to learn the true meaning of the mantra, once a Ranger, always a Ranger. Starring David Yost, Walter Emmanuel Jones, Catherine Sutherland, Steve Cardenas, and Charlie Kirsch. So, and it's also directed by Charlie Haskell. So we're gonna get right to it, man. I seen it. I enjoyed it. In my non-spoiler review, because I'm gonna have to cut this up, I'm gonna get right to it. It was a good special for Power Rangers, I cannot lie, you know what I mean? And we'll get into the picks and the nitpicks later, but it was a more up-to-date, mature version of what we've already seen prior. I'm talking, you still got the cheese in there. You still got the one-liners and things of that nature. But one thing I found very cool with it, it was, let's just, before we even get into the Ranger stuff, all the character moments that you would see outside of costume was shot almost like a soap opera if you paid attention to it. It had this kind of, I don't know, like, it's hard to explain, because even the film footage obviously was digital, but it just way better, crisper. I mean, we got better, we could shoot this better. And we've seen this in the later episodes of Power Rangers. But I think this was something a little bit more different. I've watched some of the newer Power Rangers stuff, but to me, a lot of it still harkens back to old school Power Rangers, which isn't a bad thing. This is what made the franchise thrive as long as it did. But here, it wasn't like that Ranger film that was rated R type of mature. Again, it was very soap opera-esque in how they filmed a lot of the inter-character moments, how the camera was just placed, a lot of it just, and how they interacted. I don't know, it just read a lot from soap operas to me, and in how it's shot, you know. But with that being said, because we're dealing with a more mature subject matter, explaining the real life death of Tui Trang as her character Trini, and saying that she passed, being basically a hero for the Power Rangers, and when she loses her life, how the Rangers have to deal with that as they introduce her daughter into the series as well, and trying to find the balance of explaining to the daughter who they are as Power Rangers, what one being once a Ranger, always a Ranger, once and always, and what it means to the team, especially 30 years out from when they were recruited as teenagers, and with all the hinting of all Rangers that existed, because it's in the special, hinting at other Ranger teams, what that could mean to the daughter Min, Trini's daughter Min, and what that means to them. and all the history that connects all of them to that. How Trini dies and how she has to deal with it within the realm of learning that her mother was a Power Ranger, and how she has to deal with the emotional journey of that. And we get a lot of harking backs to the original series. There's definitely a lot of remember berries for you to pick throughout it. But most importantly, it's still Power Rangers aged in the right kind of manner to suit the audience where we're at now, and still be inviting to kids of that age when we started watching it back then. And if that was the aim, I think they did a marvelous job. I do wish they could beefen up the maturity of the film a little bit more, of the series a little bit more moving forward. Not saying that we have to have death and stuff like that, like on screen per se. What I mean is sometimes a lot of these character moments that they did have, it moved way too fast, and that may be because of the film was shorter. It was 55 minutes, so we get right into it from the very beginning as soon as we open, and they use an adequate amount of flashbacks to kind of fill in certain gaps that we needed to move this story forward. And for those that wish they got enough information about where they've been these past 30 years, instead of, if not for a line here and there, we're still not exactly sure what's been up with Billy and Zack. We know that Billy's been in Aquitar, and they at least let that be known in the film, in the special, but they're not really beholden to giving you anything concrete, because this was not the story to tell. The story was about how Trini passes and how they deal with that while she's not only in mourning, but trying to figure out what that means to her, losing her mother and knowing that she's a Power Ranger. And like I said, they could have got a lot more in depth with certain things, but we'll get into the picks and the nitpicks later. But overall, you will enjoy the ride getting there, especially, like I said, it brings you right back into the action in such an up-to-date feel. I wish they could have poured a little bit more money into it, as well as, like I said, it moves so fast that there were moments that they could have let breathe, and if they'd have done it right, they could have brought more emotional value to it, since they're dealing with an emotional story. And that was the thing that I thought, that it should have been a little bit more emotional. Like I said, it goes by fast, so they have to give you a lot moving it forward. And because they do that, certain moments didn't breathe enough, and it took away from some of the action, which we'll get into my picks and the nitpicks. But I think that if you came into this wanting to almost come back home, come back to that nostalgia when you was a kid, I think you will at least enjoy this next flick series, if for nothing else, for that. Now, let's get on to the spoilers. If you've seen Once and Always, Power Rangers Once and Always, you notice it just goes off without the skip of a beat. We already engaged in a fight. The fight that we seen in the trailers before was a flashback, but not a flashback that at least that the way people were speaking about it online, that I thought that they were going with like something way back. No, this was just a year ago. Trini was alive. Rita came back, and it was brought back due to Billy looking for Zordon. Now we know that Zordon got sacrificed in space, and you do see the cracked tube, but it's not clear of how that crack came. I may have to watch it again, but I don't believe it came the moment when Rita broke through while Billy was searching for Zordon. But needless to say, once Rita comes in, she is absorbed by Alpha 9, and then transforms Alpha 9 as a physical manifestation of Rita Repulsa's evil energy, which thus turned Alpha into Rita. Basically, in a nutshell, when Zordon was sacrificed, his energy spread across the universe, but so did Rita's evil energy. And in trying to put back Zordon together, he unfortunately put back together Rita. And since her body had moved on, because she became good and all of that, the evil in her, evil presence and her energy was put together and needed a form, and it came into the form of the first person she contacted when she broke through, which was Alpha 9. And it kicks off from there. Rangers get into a fight. Trini jumps into it, and unfortunately, she dies in the most. I mean, it will look dope, but knowing that she died, it was a little bit like, damn, like she just out there just spinning and exploding until she twists off the cliff and then gets vaporized. So now we get introduced to we come back into the story a year later with a time jump. We're introduced to Min Kwan, which is Trini's daughter. And actually, let me just rewind it back. We're introduced to her just before the year jump, when Billy and Zack are having a conversation trying to figure out how should they explain to her, Trini's daughter, that Trini died. And should we tell her that we're Power Rangers and that she didn't just die like randomly, or try to come up with some BS story? Should we have to tell her? And that was the argument between Zack and Billy, which I thought was executed in a very dope way, almost in a very soap opera way too. But we'll get into the picks and the nitpicks later. But for the most part, that's how we start off the story. Min overhears it, and then we got to get to the time jump, and Min is resentful towards Billy, knowing that Billy was the one that was trying to contact Zordon. He brought back Rita, who eventually killed her mother. So that creates a certain layer of drama and dynamic between her and Billy, which is interesting. And then Zack giving up his career in Congress, we find out, to come down and raise Min. It's almost like if this was an old show, My Two Dads. She has a dad she resents. It's not that she really hates, but she needs to output her anger towards for losing her mom, and also finding out that she's a Power Ranger. And then she has Zack, and Zack is still all cool and chill, and he's the guy that is basically her father figure. It's not clear how far back she knew them both, because we know that Billy and Zack kind of have been gone for quite some time. But the way we come back into the story, it does seem like she's been around them long enough. She knew them very well. It's not like she didn't know that they were involved in her life at some point. They didn't just show up when Trini died in civilian form. Like, she knew them prior. That's what it seems like. And especially for Zack to come to be her guardian and it kind of be altogether cool. She had to have known Zack for quite some time. So this all kind of works in a good way to up the story, set us on our path. And the whole story is really about what it really means to be a ranger, and also once and always a ranger. Because when they get in contact with Rita on the year anniversary of Trini's death, they created a way, just like the old story when Zack, when the first beginning of needing replacing rangers, when Jason, Zack, and Trini had left, they left, and we had to use body doubles and all the rest of it just to try to figure out how we could narratively put it, since they left the show and there was no way to film anything, how we can do this, especially when now in the Once and Always special, Amy Jo Johnson declined to show up for our own reasons, JDF also for his own reasons, and also St. John just couldn't go because he had legal reasons, because they filmed it outside of the United States, and because of his legal ailments he cannot travel abroad. So they found a way to write them, have them part of the special, but write them off. Now, there's an interesting thing. A lot of people said they use recorded ADR or old recordings of them for the opening scene when you see them fighting. And I do believe that it did sound like Kimberly. And it did sound like Trini. But I don't think that was... I'm almost positive that was in Austin St. John. So that's the interesting thing about that part. But needless to say, once we get back into the story and we find out Robo Rita takes these 3 rangers off and also other rangers, that's how they can incorporate different years of rangers now existed, by showing all the ones that they had shrunk down and used Hasbro toys. Is very good marketing, I'm not gonna lie, as avatars of them to show that they've been taken, shrunk down, and then having their energy absorbed. But it was pretty much a decent way, especially in how Power Rangers operates, for them to be able to explain their absence, all 3 Rangers' absence. Rest in peace to JDF, because he ended up dying after the series. The special wrapped. So before it even came out, it was like, dag man, we're mourning Trini in this as a memorial to Trini, and it's like it's already shot and done. And now JDF is gone. So they had to try to figure out how that it could still all work and also lend shine and remembrance to Jason David Frank. That being said, though, the story is pretty much Power Rangers, It's dope as hell to see these characters after so much time, especially with a little bit more special effects work that we couldn't really get from before, and especially shot in all digital, very clean and clear, and especially with the updates that they do, how it lends well to how the colors pop on screen, and the fact that we're not using Sentai footage now, so you don't have these dramatic changes in the quality of film when it transitions from the Japanese footage to the American footage. So we have just one clean thing. I think Beast Morphers in a lot of later episodes, even though they use Sentai footage, because it's now more up to current, the transitions between the two aren't as jarring. But at the same time, it's so Power Rangers that it's kind of part of the aesthetic, especially if you've grown up with it. But to see it on camera and just treat it with a lot more care and a lot more maturation, I do believe that it provided a better experience, especially for people that have watched it growing up to now. And also, as the series kind of progresses, you see it get to this kind of level of production anyway. So for them to take the next step, especially with Netflix, and to give it more of a filmatic approach, a more filmatic, it's not a film, but a more filmatic approach, it actually lends well to the aesthetic and how it looks and how it translates on camera. And when we finally get through the almost the mildly coming of age of Min Kwan, going from the emotion of wanting retribution and revenge for the death of her mother, and not being able to, now that she knows her mother's a Power Ranger, taking her power morpher and trying to morph herself so she can avenge her mother, and the power not selecting her because all she was about was revenge. And there's an excellent dialogue between Min Kwan and her uncle Zack, really trying to teach, not only just tell her, teach her, this is the reason why you can't morph. Rita's here for revenge. That led it to your mother dying. You going out for revenge is not going to help. And the powers, for all intents and purposes, is of a good nature. It can sense that you're not in it to save lives. You're in it to basically take life in revenge. And the Power Ranger power won't select you for that. And she needed to understand what it meant to be a Power Ranger. And by the very end, Zack's words held so sincere and dear. It also adds more weight to how it ends, reminding everyone, especially before it even ends, when bringing Steve Cardenas as Rocky and bringing Catherine, I forget her last, Catherine Sutherland as Kat, which is so cool that's still her name. When they bring them in, it also lends more weight to once a Ranger, always a Ranger, when they come back and have to jump back into a fight, creating proxy coins, which also lends a little bit more information to how other Rangers are able to morph. It sounded like he just made it, so I don't know if that was the first time he made proxy coins. It kind of feels like it. But at the same time, with that kind of idea that they can do that, it also now kind of explains how in other specials, other Rangers that were supposed to be representations of Mighty Morphin were able to show up in the series and still be able to use their powers, even though in story, in canon, that should not be. And I thought it was very excellent how, even though they couldn't really do too much elaboration on a lot of moments and things that have happened before, that they were able to incorporate a lot of things from before and kind of pepper it throughout the series, even though in 55 minutes, to kind of bring in other generations of Power Rangers to let you know that they are in canon, they all exist and coexist. Even in sidebars are saying the Pandora Protocol to get all Rangers all across the world, and it's acknowledging that there are different teams out there, and that also makes everything kind of in canon with all the specials that JDF has been in, Adam Park has been, it just adds more weight. All other specials that these Mighty Morphin characters have popped up in start to get canonized in a better way in Once and Always. And if they have a series, they can do so much more to also bring in other generations of Power Rangers and move, kind of fix the canon, if you will, and really clarify what is canon and what isn't, and maybe even kind of lend itself to certain things in Boom. Even though you could say Boom exists in another universe, you can still borrow from what Boom has done and incorporate it, such as the Omega Rangers, to also add more to it. All you need to do is just have one scene of Zack looking at his Omega Ranger helmet, and that is just enough. You ain't got to say anything else. It'll just let people know that Zack was not only just that Ranger, just the Mastodon Ranger. He was also an Omega Ranger. And if you want, you could actually throw in a helmet from one of the teams that they didn't use from before and just say that they were also another team after that. Or if not that, just throw in matter of fact, where the White Ranger actually came from that season, you could have him holding the green helmet, because there wasn't a Black Ranger in that Sentai series, but there was a Green Ranger. You could just say he became a Green Ranger shortly after that. You know what I mean? Like, and it could knock on the door using the Sentai footage that we've never used before, and also explain how Sentai in that one I think it was the 20th anniversary, if not the 25th, where JDF showed up, how they were able to use, because they skipped a few Sentai seasons, but they were in the Legendary Wars. That's what it was. You could kind of incorporate and fold in how other Rangers that was there before had those powers. And you could just say Zack showed up as a different Ranger, and Adam was in the Black Ranger when he showed up there. So at least you could explain how you had all these other Rangers that we've never even seen before, and just say we have. But that was one of the original Mighty Morphins on their journeys after, Omega Rangers, and coming back down and living their life, maybe having families and moving on, divorces, whatever, but this is could kind of canonize a lot of things that you didn't really explain, couldn't really explain. You kind of did it for the novelty, but now you can kind of go fix continuity issues and errors and kind of make a cohesive, universe moving forward, even though we know they're going to try to reboot it all. Now with the success of how Once and Always is, now you have an opportunity to actually do that moving forward. And to wrap up, before we get right into the picks, in the nitpicks, I will say this. I really enjoyed it. I mean, we're going to get into the picks of the nitpicks very detailed later, because there's certain things I felt like they could have worked on, but I can't expect so much from 55 minutes and having so much that you want to deal with and still keep it Power Rangers. Also mature it enough, but also make it easy for others to jump right in. They were, even though in 55 minutes they were juggling a lot, and also to keep the attention of everyone, to keep it moving forward. And that was, to me, if you actually, was at the expense of some of the action sequences. Not to say that there wasn't a lot of actions, but there was just also a lot of action sequences that could not give you more battles in that moment, because we had to move to the next scene, the next scene, to tell the story, and the overarching story was the actual priority. And if you ask me, they had a story to tell, and I think they could have got to a lot of the story could have been even better had they had more time to allow it to breathe. And you're going to hear me say that a lot throughout the picks and the nitpicks. But had they had more time to let things breathe, they could have expanded on certain action sequences, made them even a little bit more better and more articulated, and could have had more time to make it even more exciting and challenging, as opposed to being able to only select the only things that you can to keep the film going forward. If they did shoot a lot of action, they had to dense it down to keep it within a 55-minute time, and also be able to build out more of the Rangers. And even at the end of the day, it may still feel like a Ranger episode even in that, but with a lot more sequences, but the sequences had to be a little bit shorter than we would have gotten in a regular episode, because we have to also tell the story, get to the next thing, kind of remind you who these characters are and where they've been, but for the most part, keep it still centered around Trini and Min Kwan becoming and evolving into a Yellow Ranger, which she does at the very end, once she understands what Zack was trying to explain to her when she became selfless and she jumped out like a hero. The Morpher protected her from the blast of saving Billy, just like her mother tried to save Billy, but she lost her life there. But now that Min had her power morpher, if you ask me, especially because she got the memories of Trini, some part of Trini in that morpher was able to protect her daughter from the lethal blast that Rita tried to hit her with, and remind her of what it was as her mother to be a Ranger, so she could take up the mantle and carry on the tradition and become her own Ranger. And I think that it was excellent in execution. Excellent. The story, the idea, in execution, it was still good. I thought that there was so much room to make it better, but it was so limiting due to the 55-minute mark and to keep everything moving fluidly. That's why they say that the opening fight scene kind of is cut up. There's other footage that they had, but they had to cut it down for sensitivity reasons. but I'm also sure because they didn't want to make it they couldn't make it too long because we still have a 55-minute time to keep it within. And with that being said, I enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I wonder how you guys feel. Leave it in the comments below. And without further ado, on to the picks. Now for the spoilers. Look, before we get into the picks, I gotta let you know everything that you've wanted to see in this, you're not going to get. It was a great special, make no mistakes. But if you wanted details to where these characters have been, you're not gonna get that. This is really about how the original Rangers deal with Trini's passing and the passing of the torch to Min, who becomes the Yellow Ranger. Alright, so without further ado, here are my top, and I have to pick, if I have to pick the top 4 picks, then these are my let's get to top, my pick number 1. Let's get to pick number 1. Zack and Billy are back. I love seeing these guys back. Let's just talk about Billy being back. Billy, we learned that he's been in Aquitar, and I forget what the White Ranger, the leader of the Rangers of the Aquitar team, what her name was, but he spoke of having to get back to her. Now, because we know that, they never explained whether or not there were kids involved or not, so that's something that will be very interesting to see if they would decide to build upon that. I felt that an older Billy, seeing a more older Billy, a more mature Billy has his tech industry, Cranston's Tech, or Cranston's Industries, I think that's the name of it. And what we saw was the command center, technically is, but that's where he runs his industries. The thing is where Alpha is at the bottom. That's the reason why they could be faced towards the water. He modeled it after the original command center, and he can get away with it all the while working underneath at Cranston's Industry. Now, I thought it was kind of wild to be so close to the water, because if I'm Rita or anybody alien threat, I'll just send a tsunami that way, and we'll just wipe Cranston Industries right off the map. But if no one knows and they can't be located, then it would be fair to say that no villain would know that would be where their base is. But you would think the villain would at least just get rid of the building, if anything, just to stir up the pot for the Rangers. But we get at least that from it, which explains why it looks like the command center for Cranston Industries, and he decides to model it after that. Then also, one thing that's really cool is with seeing Billy is it's that I noticed that he seemed a lot stiffer in acting, and it wasn't extremely jarring because I watched it twice, so it doesn't stand out as much as before. It felt like maybe because he hasn't been in front of camera for quite some time that he seems a little bit rigid. Because I did like even when you watch some of the old clips of them, and I'm gonna watch the series over again, he seems more like he's acting like that, if anything, because that was his character before. But as he transitioned over time doing it so long, he seemed a lot more at ease and more in comfort. So when we had, or maybe it was a little bit harder for him to do deeper moments in terms of like the dramatic moments, but he just seemed a little rigid. But again, I thought maybe because it's possible that because he hasn't been on screen in quite some time. But the aim is hopefully that we get another season he'll loosen up and get right back into the swing of things. But one thing is certain, it was real good to see him nonetheless. Not saying that he dropped the ball in a lot of his scenes. It just seemed like he was just a little bit stiffer in how he performed physically. But at the same time, he still was able to deliver his lines. And I still enjoyed seeing it. And in a way, it's still kind of like Power Rangers, because they weren't really trying to get Emmy awards, if you just catch my drift. Not to say that they phoned it in. You could tell these guys gave it all, but there's a certain layer of cheese to that lets you get away with that. And because it was always more of a fun type of show, I guess it couldn't stand out. But when we had to get into the deeper moments, especially, it seemed like because he's been out of it for so long, it seemed like he seemed a little stiffer in performing. But at the same time, it was really awesome to see him, because we haven't seen Billy in years, since Zeo, and he has never came back. So for me, it was just dope to see Billy back in blue. Now, your boy Zack, I gotta really keep it a band with you. This is my favorite Power Ranger. If you don't know now, you know. And it's not for the obvious reasons. I actually like this suit better. And like I said before, I fucked it up with Voltron. All I remember was the lions more. I remember them in the suits, but I didn't realize Keith didn't wear black, though he wore red. But the black lion, he always rode. So for me, when I first see Power Rangers, it was like, yo, this is like live action Voltron, bro. Like, this is crazy. So you know the black one is gonna be my favorite. That's the leader, right? And then when I watched it, it wasn't. But the funny thing was that he was the best character to me in my eyes. So seeing Zack back in Once and Always, for me, was like the biggest treat ever. Like, no lie, like the little kid in me was so hyped, because when he left the series, it really, if you were a young kid, it's like, damn, man, that was my favorite character too. It just sucked. So you always wondered what could have happened, or would have and could have and should have. And for him to come back to the series, just like Billy did, it really kind of filled in the blank and make you feel like, dang, it kind of satisfied the young child in me's hunger, if that makes sense, for my favorite superhero in Power Rangers to show back up. And he showed up, and let's just say these guys are in pretty good shape, especially at their age. But Zack more so than everyone else, so it seems, even though he's a little bit smaller than what he used to be, because I feel like he was a little bit bigger, but that's when they were a lot more active. But they all, I mean, like him and Billy looked like they still could perform some of their stunts, even though you could clearly tell Billy wasn't. But Zack, I think he was a little bit more active, and Steve was as well. But Zack, just seeing him back was awesome. I felt like he, for the most part, like someone else had, I think mentioned, I seen written somewhere, for the most part, kind of carried the whole show. His charisma carried this. The only thing the series lacked was, what we couldn't get was seeing Tui Trang again and seeing our original five. That was all that was lacking. And especially when you see how Walter is with Austin St. John's on their channel, on Fanword, and you should go subscribe. They're cool dudes. And I like how they banter off of each other too, because they're so comfortable around each other that I feel like that was the only other thing they could have, they would have needed. But having Walter there was the gem of the show, to be quite honest, because, and there was another one, Steve Cardenas is a good runner-up, but Zack, because Zack was always cool on the show. Or older Zack being cool now was even doper. And the fact that we find out that we didn't get that much information from him, but we find out that he was in Congress and he sacrificed his career in Congress to take care of men. There's no talk of him having any kids. Hopefully he doesn't. They don't just leave my man Zack out to dry. I feel like this, like writers and Boom Studios just don't be respecting your boy. But I'm not gonna get into that no more. You can go on the channel and see me go vent about that. You dig? But not for nothing, Zack being back, I think not only kept the energy of the series going, the deeper, darker moments that they were able to address in it, like losing Tui, really worked having him be the guy. I was surprised that they went with him being her guardian, men being her guardian, but because Jason wasn't there, and we already know that Amy Jo Johnson isn't there, so they had to write for them. And Tommy, because the actor JDF, may he rest in peace, prior to the filming, he didn't want to he didn't want to show up for that. So because he didn't want to show up for that, they found a way to write them out of to be in it, but being written out of it, so that we can at least let Zack and Billy push the story forward. That's why when Trini passes, they the only ones that took off the helmets and had any emotional response, and it sucked because why would they be the only two to take off their helmets? But at the same time, what else could you do? But they did it right. The way they did that was to get them out the way so that we could deal with the only two Rangers that we had left who came back to do the series, and they was able to bring the other people from Mighty Morphin to come in and fill out the team and really show all seasons of Mighty Morphin, and was able to do that in such a way, and still at the end bringing the old footage of all of them singing together, which was real interesting because I don't remember. I vaguely remember that, but I was wondering, like, was that in an episode? I could vaguely remember that. And Zack singing, that's funny. But I think he said he did sing and perform at once. But I don't know if that was his actual voice, if he was lip syncing, because I know Amy Jo does sing and write, and she really did play. She really did play the guitar. So, but by taking them out, they were able to focus on the Rangers that they did have. And I think that when they looked at how they read, they realized Walter Jones was the best person to be the Guardian, if no one else, because he knew he could carry the emotional weight better than anybody else that tried to handle it on screen, even better than men, to be honest. But let's be for real, Walter Emmanuel Jones is a more accredited actor, if you will, and he would know how to deal with handle the dramatic moments, and because he also understands Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, he will know how to balance it with the suave and the charisma that he normally does to carry it from scene to scene to scene. And even an adult Zack with the fatherly advice and vibe, like he aged well into what we got on screen, just like Billy aged well to what we see Billy at right now, from the geek nerdy dude that was afraid to fight to not being afraid to square up one-on-one with Rita and all of these putties, and was with it, even though he had no choice, but he was with it to get busy. And to see where he's at as an older person that's not afraid to, have more adventures. I'm going to go back out into space and all of this other shit. To see Zack age into one, I never would have thought Congress, but because he has the bravado and the cool vibe that he can take men under the wing, and even the moments where he just read her, knew that she had Trini's Morphin, the way he handled it, he was like, hold on, I need the room outfit. Like, everything that he did was hitting spot on to spot on. He was, if this was to be one of those family TV shows or whatnot. He is like, he would be the cool dad that everybody could work around. And he was able to do that for this series and do more of the heavy lifting and keep everything moving forward. And for him to be able to carry that, I thought was really amazing. And the fact that they allowed for him to get like even the last shot at Rita, which I didn't think they would do that. You know what I'm saying? Everything was positioned right. Even for him to call out the morphs, even though they give David Yost a lot of billing, even some things people have to pay attention. They be pushing Zack to the front because you clearly could tell Zack carried this shit. He carried the whole series in terms of the acting. Not saying that nobody else didn't hold their weight, but you could tell like his vibe without even trying to jump in front of everyone. You know, you could just tell as soon as he came on screen, it was like Zack is back. And he's back in black. So it was dope seeing him and seeing them give a lot more honor to his character. And I hope they honor him even further by at least saying he had some kids of his own. And it'd be dope if they have a series with, imagine Zack raising, like maybe he has a boy and a girl, and raising them with men all together. And maybe they all go to the same high school. That'd be even dope. But Min is the oldest, and Min and Zack has to keep that secret from her step brothers or adopted brother and sister, if you will. Maybe even at some point in the series make Zack adopt Min, even though she's like 15, 16. It'd be a cool little thing to add as a layering, especially for the kids that have grown up into adults that have kids, may have adopted some, maybe want to, whatever. It'd be a good story beat, that a more mature story beat that you can further explore down the line. Like, you're not my dad, my real dad. She can have moments with Zack inner conflict and like that, and we can address those type of issues that kids deal with, and still make it Power Rangers. But these are the type of things that I say that they could take and choose to make mature themes to write around, to create like a more mature things to deal with, while dealing with maybe more interconnected and well developed villains that they can now introduce brand new, or even rebrand, like take Nasty Knight and bring him back and make him a more calculated villain. You can have a lot more stories like that, in which now that you can further the storytelling, further the genre. You know what I'm saying? Like, I really think that would be actually dope. But like I said, standouts, Billy and Zack being back, and it was awesome to see them both. Pick number 2. Quality from the costumes to the set pieces. Now, this is going to be a little bit shorter, and I'm going to try and shorten it down. I don't want to get too long-winded on this, but I had to talk about the costumes, the set pieces, and the graphic work. Everything is updated from the morphing. I will say this, when they scream it's morphin time, I think they could have done that better. That looked a little too, I think they could have done that a little bit better. Too green screenish or something. But how they morph, even some of the scenes when they show Billy morph and how it just came on them, those stuff were cool effects. They didn't need to do that with the putties, I'll be honest with you, when they crumpled, because I feel like that was wasted money just to have a cool effect. You didn't need that. I would have rather you put more money into the men's acting. You know what I mean? But we'll get to that in a little bit. But the costumes look of quality, and for a long time it's funny to see what cosplayers are able to do in this day and age from what the series was trying to do when they did the American shots, and see such a deep contrast in quality and care. But now that there's more money, more budget, they made up-to-date suits, and I think the suits was phenomenal. I wish they would have. I'm not mad that they wanted to make it more their own. I would have loved for them to try their best to aim for how it looked in the Sentai series. With that shine. It just had this certain shine that you can't get. I don't see on the new suits. But I will say this. The colors are richer. It looks crisper. It looks of better quality. I just wish they would have aimed more for the Sentai footage. The morphing, phenomenal. When you see the Zords come together and the reshots, oh man, the colors is richer. I like even the fact when they took it to the moon, you can see that they got it, because we knew they got teleported from Earth to the moon, the Zords. You see it transition from the daytime to nighttime on the moon, as a way to say that it was coming and got teleported there. And I thought that was kind of cool to do. Everything was just more quality to it. You know what I mean? Even the Zords. So I loved what I saw. I thought it looked excellent. Like I said, the costumes, the colors, the visual effects, the detail work that they did on Robo Rita. Just the care that they all went into its presentation, I thought was dope. But also you could tell in certain shots, because you could tell they can't give you too much scopes by shooting in different locations that much, that you had to have a lot of vacant and dark rooms. And just to do that, you know what I mean, you could tell that they didn't have the budget, you know what I mean, to make more detailed environments. But again, it was just for a special, but they said the sets are still up there. So hopefully, and it seemed like they're getting a lot of traction, we'll get more Power Rangers, which thus, hopefully they'll put more money into this series, which I gotta believe they will. Pick number 3. It was shot like a soap opera and still was PR. Now, like I said in our non-spoiler review, this shit was shot like a soap opera. I mean, it's hard to explain, but you know, if you watch soap operas with the melodrama, it's still shot almost like you're like it's a play. It gave you that kind of vibe, but not only that, just the way the camera is set. Like I said, when they had the moment when they was talking to each other out loud, and then men walked in when they was talking when Billy and Zack was going back and forth about, like, look, well, we're gonna have to explain to her that she lost some arms. You know what I'm saying? And when the way they went back and forth, it sounded like a soap opera. It looked like a soap opera. And even when she walked in on the conversation and the gas, I mean, like I said, it was all like a soap opera. And to the betterment of the show, instead of going extra dark, you can mature it like it's shot like a daytime soap opera. So now you can get all the drama out of it. Daytime soap operas will give you that. The storylines are different, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, give you action. And I think that was the best way to mature the story, the characters and the story and everything. And still, because like a soap opera is daytime TV. It's not nighttime, it's daytime. You could do all the melodrama and all of the effects and still kind of push the limit on subject matter and interconnected relationships, so you could deal with who's dealing with who broke up with who. You can kind of do that with this without it going into the realm of what the non-sponsored one that they did with the blood and the gore and all that. You don't have to do that here so much. You could really focus on the melodrama between characters, and that could be an interesting thing. And still have little, you know what I mean, like Full House moments, if you will, with the comedy and some cheese, some grade A Power Ranger cheese, like they already was given in it, but again with like more well developed storylines, like more intricacies into more multi-layered characters. And still be able to make it Power Rangers. And I think that they were on a good path. I would like a little bit more maturing of the subject matter and writing. I would like a little bit more mature writing. You don't have to get rid of the Power Ranger cheese. You don't have to. You know what I mean? You don't even have to water it down much. You know what I mean? But mature it, though. You can mature the cheese. You know what I mean? And that's what I think that they can do, because they already did that here. I just like them to push it just a little bit further. Because then I think you could get a lot more longevity with these characters. And what I mean is just like how a soap opera could go on and on and on for years and years and years. It's because you upped the maturity level of it, and it comes with a certain level of cheese for daytime viewing watching, but people watch it on and on like it's a religion. Well, you can kind of do that with here. You can give them that daytime cheese feel as we get to learn these characters more, while also creating a more elaborate story when you introduce the villains and what they have to deal with as Power Rangers as well. And I think you could do real good. And what I mean by like a soap opera, you could literally shoot like one episode, don't have to have all every character in it. You could focus on like 2 or 3 or 4, and not every story has to have all the Rangers showing up at the end together. You could start a story and finish it in the next episode, and then you see the other Rangers show up. Then if you make another, every 2 episodes could kind of like be one whole big story, and then you could focus on one set of characters in one episode and focus on another set of characters elsewhere, and still have fights and battles that they will deal with on their own, and they don't have to call for no one else unless they really, really need to, because remember, they're adults now, they have jobs. There's ways to do this right that you could make this kind of go on again, like I said, like a soap opera. And I think the fact that they started shooting it like that was very interesting to me. I wouldn't be surprised if the directors came from soap operas, because that's what it kind of looked like a little bit to me too. And pick number 4 has to be Men, for good reasons, bad reasons, and all reasons. Men wasn't well written, directed, or wasn't strong in acting, nor developed well enough to care about as a character. And not that she's Trini's daughter. A little long-winded for that to be a pick, but I had to pick Men because Men was a mixed bag for me. Watching it the second time, it wasn't as bad as the first. But I want to just to get the bad out the way. I didn't know I could. That's why the title had to be so long, because I wasn't sure if it was the writing or the fact that you could tell that she is not as naturally gifted acting. Either that or it was the director that couldn't pull a better performance out of her. Unless the main reason they led with, which I'm sure they did it with the other Rangers too when they got on, it was more for the performing, that she could perform her own stunts. But at the same time, and we'll get to the stunt work too, she sounded robotic sometimes. I don't know if it was how it was edited, but sometimes her emotional level kind of was all over the place for me. Sometimes she was acting way too bratty for me. It was starting to be unlikable at one point. Like, I'm going to just steal the rat bug. I'm going to just go. I get that they needed her to do that, but some people don't know how to make someone be that way without not coming off like a whole dick. And I felt like because they didn't let a lot of story beats breathe to flesh out the full range of emotions, that when she was going from one attitude to another attitude, it just felt like she just had an attitude. Like she was just getting on your nerves. Oh, I'm gonna get to being a ranger, and it was like, oh, you're annoying me a little bit, man. I don't want you to annoy me, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want you to be a whole ass about this. I get that you want revenge, and I think that was the problem. And maybe it was because that they didn't have enough minutes, because from what I heard, and I was watching another channel, they normally used to shoot the Power Rangers shows in like 3 days, and they did 12 days on this. So, and because it was longer, it would have shot like a 2-episode joint. I would say more close to 3, but even so, that's 6 to 9 days. And they did it in, I believe, what the guy said, 12. So they did it in 2 weeks. I don't know what they could have done with Min, because I don't know if maybe if they would have had like 10 more minutes to spread out and pad out moments where she had dialogue to at least make you see her go to those ranges a little bit easier, as opposed to is where she did it. And again, I think it was how she did it. It wasn't the fact that she did it. It was how she did it. In the narrative, you'd expect her to want to go down the revenge path and all of that, but the way she did it, it felt cliche. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was like, well, I'm mad. We gotta destroy them. And then when they had the 2 villains in the mag, well, I'm gonna go down there and destroy them. It just felt like she was almost telling on herself, like, as opposed to showing it, the emotion, and show her going into that range. It almost was like she was trying to narrate it out, and it was like, now you kind of coming off more like a brat. So that because you want men to be likable apart from her being Trini's daughter, because it's hard to divorce that, because that's what you want to see Trini's daughter step into the role. So it's even more so for you to root for her. But in the beginning, she was just coming off like a little brat, like that didn't want to listen to Uncle Zack. You know what I'm saying? That rhymed. But nah, like I said, I just felt like I wish they was able to give her a lot more coaching to bring out certain beats that I wanted, because this was supposed to really hit you hard about Trini, and you didn't really start feeling some of that until they finally showed some flashbacks towards the end. And I have to give them some respect. They weren't relying on a lot of retread of old clips. I would have liked a couple more, or at least when they dropped the credits to show Trini pictures and stuff like that, because that's what I heard, that they was gonna get a lot of photos from the guys that was on set to probably bring into the series. And I don't know if they mean by leaving it around the house per se, because that'd be cool. So when they do this new season, I feel like they'll do once and always a season. But when they get around to it, at least they'll have those pictures around so we can kind of get those Easter eggs. So Tui is always kind of around, even, and always a part of the show, which would be dope moving forward. But again, Min, I don't know, like some of her moments, like I said, stealing the rad bug too, running back out to fight at the juice bar, you know what I mean, going to want to destroy the Manitar and all of that. It just, she jumped from one to another so atypically that it was. And I know this still supposed to be Power Rangers cheese, but this is where, especially when you're dealing with this subject matter, where you had missed the opportunity of some strong character development if she was a stronger actor to carry those beats, so you could relate to her a lot easier in camera. So when we finally see her morph, you could love it as much more. And again, I don't know if it's the editing. I don't know if I could all the way say it was the director, but I feel like he should at least seen in lens that she could have provided a lot more, or you guys should have coached her out way before the other guys showed up on set, because now they have to do, especially Zack, would have to do a lot more lifting in the moment. Had she been able to bring a lot more emotional value to it, I think they could have played off each other so much more. But don't get me wrong, they do have chemistry. Min and Zack do have a cool chemistry. It's just all about getting the best out of men. The actress to get the best out of her to pour into men, to make men a little bit more richer in those moments where we needed her to be. And again, like I said, it might not have been all the way her. It might have been just also the writing, not writing her to get to that destination in a better way so she could give a better performance, so that at least for me, I could be less annoyed by her and I could enjoy her a lot more than you were able to when she went from 0 to 100, and it's like, ah, man, she's coming off like a brat. But near the end, you still fall for her, because at the end of the day, the girl has a winning smile. You know what I'm saying? She kind of is giving a little bit of Trini too. Not saying that she really looks like her, because not exactly, but she gives a nice she gives a nice Trini vibe. And she plays like she. I feel like she could play Trini's daughter well, but I feel like they need to write her a little bit better and put her more into acting classes, so that when it's time to roll, we can get so much more out of her as a character for those moments that we needed, where Zack was doing so much more of the lifting in the moment, whereas if she could have come just as strong, that chemistry they have would have so much more range of movement now. And if you didn't buy into that moment, you already, then you would have, or if you did, imagine if she could have acted it out better and it was well written even better. Their chemistry would have took your emotion from one point and moved the needle. That's what I think. But let me know what you think. And at the end of that, just before we close out, again, just to reiterate, it's not men was a little bit of a mixed bag, but at the very end of it, I came around to her full stop when she got into the costume, and at that last moment where her, Billy, and Zack really started bringing out the wholesomeness in her that you want to see, because that's all Trini was giving. Trini was just like a wholesome little mama. And you know what I mean? Rest in peace to Trini. Now you already know we gotta get into the nitpicks. And nitpick number 1, the stunts and some of the stunt doubles. I think they could have had better fights. That was my one nitpick. And what I mean by better is it could have been longer and it could have been better choreographed. I felt like the older fight scenes from the older vintage episodes were way more elaborate, way more energetic, and had so much more to give. Now I know that's back when these guys were able to do and perform their stunts 100%. Now I get it. Some of these guys, even though they were martial artists most of their lives, now that they're older, they haven't been doing all of that as active. Some of them are not going to be able to perform a lot of their stunts. Catherine, as great as it was to see Catherine, when they flipped her over, that wasn't her. That was not her. That was a stunt double. You know what I mean? Billy, man, I feel like Billy had a stunt double or two. Zack, at first I thought Zack had a stunt double, but then someone had some of the stills, and I was like, I don't know, he might could have done that. It's just that we don't see if he's flipping and landing all the way down, or he was landing on something a lot softer, because they're shooting it a lot better and they're more into the safety of the actors. That's why I think that they used a lot more stunt people than they ever would have done before, because they were pushing them to their limits. And now that these are older guys, Netflix is not trying, even if they were willing to do some of the stunts, I'm sure Netflix was like, nah, we're not doing that. We're going to have you guys good. And I think that took away from a lot of the fight scenes, if you ask me. And I think some of the things went a little bit slower. And I know sometimes they do tend to shoot fight scenes slow so that they could speed it up in post. so it could be a lot more fluid. But sometimes it looked a little bit slow, especially in the civilian fights. Even though Min is a credible actress, I didn't get any of that in there. Even at there, it felt like they soft shoot a lot of her fighting, and you could see the choreography. It almost made me wonder, did they put this together real quickly? At least the script and putting the stunts together quickly, because the stunts I've seen in older Power Rangers stuff, even some of the up-to-date new one like SPD and stuff like that, I felt like I've seen way more effort into the fights. So it felt like maybe next go I put as much effort into the fights, and then the fights was a lot shorter too, which kind of like was like, dang man, I wanted a little bit more fights. Even the Megazord fight was short, and don't get me wrong, usually Megazord fights are short, but I was kind of wanting a little bit more, you know what I'm saying, just a little bit more from it. I mean, I get it, 55 minutes and you have to tackle so much, and in the beginning opening scene it looked like everything was cut down, and I heard that the fights, not so much a fight scene, but there was another moment with Trini that another channel was talking about, that they said, and I ain't 100% sure, but if it's true, because I would believe it, they said that they had to cut a lot of things out just for the sensitivity of how Tui had passed, but they shot certain scenes, and you know, I guess in editing they're like, nah, I don't know if this is gonna be good, because they were supposed to show, from what one guy said on his channel, they showed Trini, if I'm not mistaken, I think they said they were supposed to show Trini's body, but definitely find her morpher. But then they decided not to do that because they said that was supposed to be on the other side behind the headquarters, behind Crafton Industries, which is kind of weird because it looked like they said there was a cliff back there, and it's kind of weird because you would have almost thought, how could there be a cliff there if the beach is here? But neither here nor there. You were supposed to see her at some point lying next to her morpher, and then they decided to take that out. I don't know if they shot it, but yeah, they took that out, which I could see why. That's, you're not sure if what they even put on screen might have been a little bit extra, you know, with all that extra explosion and the sheet going over the cliff and going away, like vaporizing. But at the same time, I get why they would thought to cut it out, and even so, it looked like it was cut short because all of a sudden the helmets was off, and it just felt like they was cutting it so much that they didn't, again, like I said, didn't allow certain moments to breathe. But the fight scenes, I don't know, maybe they were longer and they trimmed it down, but I felt like they could have done a little bit better. The opening with Billy and Rita fighting was dope. I wish they would have showed moments with Tui fighting, like really going hard at it, so we could and change the music up and create a little bit more emotional value to it. I just feel like it would have been just real dope had they been able to draw out the fight scene, not forever, but add more to it, because that was really a nitpick of mine. Some of the fight scenes went by a little bit too fast, and for what I've seen them been able to achieve before in older episodes, I'm talking about like season 1, 2, 3, I just felt like we could have gotten so much more and way better badass civilian fight scenes and in costume fight scenes, and really would have seen something that we haven't seen in a little while. But again, it's been a long time and it's good to see these guys, but it was a little bit of a nitpick of mine. My next nitpick, that damn cartoon magnet. I'm gonna be honest with you, man. When they had the master plan and they showed that big magnet up in the sky, I was like, nah, nigga, nah. I was like, no, he did not do this. Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner, I'm gonna get a big ass magnet and get the villain stuck on a magnet. I couldn't believe they did that. But it was Power Rangers. They would have done that in the Power Rangers episode. I just didn't expect them to do that in this once and always. But I get it. 55 minutes, we got to get this thing going. We would have did that with Power Rangers. But for this to have been such a global event, and this guy Snizzard going out there getting ranges and collecting ranges, having this magnet, that shit was just ridiculously easy. And I know that Billy had to add all of that word salad on top of it, so it wasn't just a regular magnet. But nah, that shit was a whole magnet. And then these dudes just morphed. This guy came in and showed up, and the magnet just pulled him up into the sky. I'm like, what fucking cartoon shit is this? But I can't get mad at Power Rangers cheese. But that shit was a little bit of a nitpick. I was like, damn, man, you got this. These guys are beating Rangers all over the world, and you get this Acme magnet, and that was it. And then y'all left them up there and teleported away and left them up there like, what if somebody came over and turned it off? Like, you didn't even try to contain them. Like, it was just fun. It was just kind of comical for a second for me, man. But it was just a minor nitpick. And I got one other nitpick, and since I had to choose it, because I already kind of addressed that the series was a little too short and moved too fast. It felt like they just cut a lot of stuff out. But if I gotta choose anything else, they never really addressed what happened and where the Power Rangers have been this whole time. And that was a little bit of a nitpick because we don't know. But I like how they carried on. Like, yeah, everybody came back. We've been doing this for a while. And technically speaking, if you looked at the series, the OG cast technically had popped up before. Or several specials, but yeah, there's just no moment where we could find out what happened. Like, that was a little bit of a nitpick because I kind of wanted to hear if they were Rangers elsewhere, but I'm kind of glad they did it because now, if we have more seasons, maybe Zack could talk about his time in space with Trini. Maybe even hint that they used to date a long time ago. That would be so cool. But I don't know. You let me know. Leave it in the comments below. But that's my nitpicks. They just never addressed what Zack's been up to. Not in depth. They just said he was in Congress. We don't know if he has kids. What happened at the peace conference? Was there really, excuse me, a peace? Damn. Excuse me. Pardon me. Was it really a peace conference? What went on with Billy in Aquitar? What happened to Rocky? Like, when did he leave? Did he not come back as a Ranger for a long time? Because he hurt. From what I understood, he hurt his back in Turbo. That's why he left and passed his powers down to the little kid. When did he come back? None of these stories. Like, did it seemed like Kimberly and Jason are cool? I mean, they morphing and fighting together again. What happened? Like, no one. Like, what happened? We know that Cat is still with Tommy. They have a son. I mean, we just want to know what happened. But one thing that is dope is if you have a whole season, to pepper out what's happened to them over the years. Maybe even get some cool flashbacks. But that's it for my nitpicks. Let me know in the comments below what you think. As you can see, I really did enjoy the Power Rangers Once and Only special. It was dope as hell. Excited for it. We're gonna still keep talking more and more about Power Rangers stuff. I have a Power Rangers channel, playlist. We're gonna keep talking more and more and more. I'll even do a review for the Cosmic Fury that's gonna come out because I like to think that we're gonna get a lot more dope Power Rangers stuff. I know there's a movie that they wanna work on too to reboot the whole universe again. Let's just stay tuned and let's keep talking Power Rangers stuff. You already know what to do. Leave it in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe. See you next time. And as always, till I have a better outro. Chill.